I still do see the screen share.
Well, it should be yeah, it should be the slideshow.
Yeah. Andrew, do you want to share your screen or
Yeah, I
which
can do
one?
that. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Here we go. Or 1 second.
We are now live on YouTube. So,
Yep, very good. So I think this should still work if I go into actual slideshow mode. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Um, and I guess that's it. I was thinking I wanted to double check one other thing about my setup, but let's get into it. Um, so have you guys introduced yourselves? Um, I'll
And
start.
fully
I'm
started
in.
this yet.
Okay.
So you're good to go ahead.
All right. I'm Andrew. I am one of the longtime instructors at KTBYTE. I do work here full time. I've taught a lot. I teach a lot of the advanced classes, including USA Computing Olympiad courses and our AP Computer Science prep
I'll
course.
start. I'm Andrew.
Sorry, I heard an echo. What was that? Okay.
Sorry.
Srijan.
So thanks, Andrew. My name is Srijan. I am also one of the instructors here. I've been teaching here for about a year, taught in other venues for another 2 years. I teach a lot of the more basic lessons from Core 1A up to Core 4B-ish. And yeah, I'm going to be helping Andrew with the seminar today.
And
So
I'm gonna introduce myself as well. I'm Kelsey. I work in operations primarily. So I'm just gonna be here mostly to support and help with the introduction, outro, and make sure all the polls get answered, and talk a little bit about how to take the test.
did you want to say anything else about the polls before we get into the slides?
Oh, anybody who is just joining now that we're getting started, if you do see a poll on your screen, take just a couple of seconds to go ahead and fill that out. It is helpful for us because it gives us a little bit of information about who we're talking to. So feel free to fill that out. There will be one more poll at the end, and that'll just help us figure out how to help you. But that's it.
Yeah, we definitely take a look at those to understand kind of what seminars you're interested in and what kind of follow-up you might want with your particular children, and just generally what's useful for you. So we're planning to start with a little bit of an overview about the advanced placement program. For a lot of our students, this may be the first advanced placement exam or sort of course level that their students are working on. So you may not be familiar with it compared to someone who's already a few years into high school. We will talk about how to actually do the test, which actually sometimes is simple and sometimes it's more complicated. So there's definitely some things to think about there. One of the common questions is confusion about the two different computer science exams. One of them is called CSA, which doesn't really stand for anything. It's just sort of the first computer science exam they had. And then CSP, which stands for Computer Science Principles. And we'll talk a fair amount about what those differences are and what to think about them. And then we definitely want to remind you, if you're thinking about doing this kind of work, what should you be doing to prepare for it? That includes this year, but also just in general, what courses and material should you be studying for that? And along the way, there are a lot of important skills that students should already have to help them do well with the exam, but also in the process of preparing for exam and this level of work will build those skills as well. So the overview of advanced placement is it is part of the College Board. I'm actually going to skip to the second bullet point for a second. The College Board is an organization, technically a nonprofit, where I would say almost all the high schools in the United States probably have some kind of connection with the College Board of sort of that being the main gateway to offer high school students an opportunity to do university level work. It also runs the SATs, which is almost universal for American high school students, as well as a number of other programs too. So they're kind of all over the place when it comes to doing advanced work and both getting into college and also doing college admissions. One other thing I'll say, just in case there's international folks watching, I know college versus university can sometimes be confusing terminology. In the US, college just means universities. So we'll often say those synonymously. Backing up to the first bullet point, like I said, this is not trying to offer an entire college education to high school students, but it is a gateway to freshman level material, first year college level students. would often see this material if they haven't studied it before. But by taking AP courses or sort of studying that material on your own, like you can at KTBYTE, you get the opportunity to show you're an expert at that level and possibly gain advantages and move a little faster through that material than other college students might. While the College Board is the organization that offers this program, universities are ultimately the ones that sort of choose what benefits you get from that. They definitely consider what AP courses or sort of similar higher level exams you've done when you're applying to universities. So it's probably pretty important for most US students who are looking for high-end colleges to be taking a few APs and trying to do well with them. And the advanced placement computer science is definitely a big opportunity for that. The other thing that's an advantage for is university credit. You can actually get credits for your degree if you do well with the exam, and it's up to the university to sort of decide what score they would require to allow that. And then I guess related to that, although not exactly the same thing, is just placement of classes. Would you be able to take a slightly more advanced class in your first year? That could depend on if you have already taken the AP level exam in that subject, which would let you place out of that. So that's all down to the universities, and there are differences between each university. So we're not going to necessarily be able to tell you right here, oh, this is exactly what you need for what you're doing, because it depends on your specific plans, but we can try to give you some general advice on that. We definitely recommend checking out, a university you plan to apply to or plan to attend to know more what their policies are. So there's also confusion sometimes about classes versus exams. Both of those are part of the AP program. So every sort of subject or exam has a certain curriculum of content that they would like to be covered for the students that will then be tested on the exam. And there are official AP classes given by sort of full-time high schools, where in school you have very specific topics you would work through, just like a regular course, but at a fairly intense level that would prepare you pretty well for the exam. And so many of our students do take KTBYTE courses in this area, but also take their home high school course if it's offered, and therefore our courses are sort of a supplement to that. With that said, you don't have to take the AP class. So you can definitely learn all the material you need to know for an AP computer science exam through either multiple courses at your high school or courses at KTBYTE or even self-study. The exams themselves have to be given through high schools. Unfortunately, we have looked into it, and it's just not possible within the regulations they have about which organizations can offer the exam. It's not possible for us to offer it directly, but we can definitely help you prepare for it. There are also some testing centers that are available in some places, but it is most common to take it through a high school. And it doesn't have to be your own high school. You can find another school if yours doesn't offer the exam you'd like to take to do that. It can be a bit of a pain, but it's definitely possible. And it's actually recommended for homeschooled students to do that. Some high schools do have policies about taking their AP class before taking the AP exam. And it's fairly common. So I think maybe even some high school administrators might not even be aware that you're allowed. And it's actually, again, encouraged for some students to actually be able to take that exam without taking like that high school's course. So that's important to know if you're trying to find a place to take the exam. You do not technically have to take the course beforehand. And we have had students who just learn it through KTBYTE and then take the exam anyway. The exams are given each May. They are in person, so they're not online. And it takes about 3 hours. Some of the times may vary per subject. And at least my high school, I remember the way they did it is during that sort of season for anyone taking those exams, you would just basically be out of your regular classes for about half the day for each exam you were taking, and you would just focus on doing that. Different high schools may have different arrangements. Srijan, did you want to add anything, I guess, before I get to the last two bullet points about kind of how you've seen exams being offered, or anything about, maybe this was a previous slide, but principles versus A? I know we have more slides, but.
Yeah, maybe we can hold off on the principles versus a discussion.
Sure, yeah.
But definitely with the AP exams, I do want to add that these are very long exams. They take a lot of stamina to get through, and that's a big part of taking AP exams, whether it's computer science, European history, whatever you take. And oftentimes they start before the actual school day starts. When I was in high school, they would make all the AP kids come at like 7 o'clock in the morning, which was insanely early at the time. And we would start way before all the other classes, and we wouldn't be done until around lunchtime. And if you had 2 exams, you tests all day. So it really is an
Yeah.
intensive exam. Be prepared for that, I guess.
Yeah, and
But you do get to miss class.
right, you get to miss your regular classes. That actually reminds me of another thing to be aware of. Again, all of the different AP subjects are given in May, so it can be very intense when you are taking multiple exams. That's another reason that doing computer science early, which many of our students have the opportunity to do because of how advanced they are compared to sort of an average high school student, it's really nice because it means it's just going to be sort of one day in that week in May where you're needing to have that intense experience rather than sort of several days where you're doing exams all day. That can be very draining. Yeah. So to kind of wrap up this slide, the main benefits I would say of the AP would be the ones that we mentioned about the university credit, placement in classes, and admissions. Just to look at the costs there, there is a registration fee for the AP exam. Again, some high schools may be able to help with that, and some may sort of ask you to pay it. It depends. But that's if you can actually get credit for your degree by doing well in the exam, that's a whole course that you won't have to take. And that can definitely have a cost benefit for you. And then again, there are those sort of more soft skills that we'll sort of talk a bit more about later on of just overall being able to handle a test like this. Srijan mentioned a sort of the stamina that you need. And of course, there are other standardized tests that you tend to take as you're getting towards college that will also sort of require a lot of stamina and be more intense like that. So it's a chance to practice and get used to that kind of thing. Okay, so in case, again, we have international audiences here, it is definitely helpful for US universities. It's a type of exam that they're used to seeing, and they already have policies for how to give credit for it. It is definitely available overseas and in other countries, although it can be a little bit more difficult to find out how to take it. So there is information on the AP or on the College Board website about sort of where there are testing centers and things like that to do it. And also, especially in Canada, where there's a bit more common crossover between the two sort of education systems, it may be more likely that you'll actually find a high school that can just offer it to you, just like in the United States. All right. So before we get into the specifics of the exam, I wanted to mention, I kind of already touched on this, that a lot of students who are doing, very advanced students in school will tend to take a lot of AP exams. And it is often an opportunity to take computer science earlier than others if you've been doing this work since middle school. So it's helpful to think about how most subjects work in school compared to how computer science works. Most subjects have something like math courses, where there are definitely different subjects within math, but there's sort of a 12-year plan in most education systems of here's the math courses you're taking at different times. And if you're sort of on an accelerated or advanced track or gifted track with math, you might be doing some of that a little bit earlier, but there's still like a lot of very specific content you have to get through before the AP exam level, like a calculus course, for example. Whereas if you compare that to computer science, most high schools don't really have that long track. It's usually basically an introductory course that is often not even in the Java language, which is tested on one of the exams, followed by one AP level class. So it's sort of like a 2-year program, and that's it. And that's really what the AP curriculum is sort of designed for that kind of student. So if you've been someone who's been studying computer science, well, and with a good attentiveness to doing well and actually understanding the material for 5 years instead of 2, you can either take the exam earlier, and when you do take it, you will find it a little bit easier than the students who have just been doing the 2-year program. So it's a really good opportunity that we absolutely recommend anyone in our courses or who has been in our courses through like middle school to definitely consider that, because it can help out and get this one out of the way compared to others. And yeah, I guess I've kind of, yeah, I guess that's most of the bullet points. So to just talk a little bit more generally about the difficulty, it is in most high schools, the AP courses are the most difficult courses that you'll take. There are sometimes, advanced electives of various kinds, or perhaps a research program that you might be able to do, which could actually be harder than this kind of test. But it's in a lot of schools, it's sort of the highest, it's beyond honors level or equivalent to honors level work. So it's definitely something you need to be prepared for. It is theoretically equivalent to introductory university courses, but even among those courses, there is some variation, so it can be hard to pin down. And we'll talk a little bit, even between the two computer science exams, that they're definitely a little bit different in their difficulty. In KTBYTE, most of the AP material is actually covered in our Core 5 level classes. So if you have taken Core 5A and B at KTBYTE, you're already probably able to understand all the material on the exam. However, you're probably not ready for it because of just the sheer amount of practice you should do to sort of have that stamina and that confidence and that good understanding of what is tested on the exam. Core level 6 goes a bit beyond that level in terms of the complexity of some of what it studies. There are a few topics that are definitely worth studying there. So if you're sort of thinking, well, yeah, I'm in 8th grade. Should I take the exam this year or take Core 6 first and then take it next year? It's probably makes sense to take it next year and kind of go a little further. On the other hand, if you're a high school freshman already, you're in 9th grade, and you know that you're planning to take a bunch of other exams, and it just feels like it would be nice to take it on your freshman year, you don't absolutely need to take Core 6. And also by doing sort of your own study, you can sort of see just the few extra things that might be nice to know about beyond what's in Core 5. We talked a little bit already about this sort of opportunity, and in some ways, computer science can be easier than other subjects. But then you could also compare it to something like calculus, where it is sort of part of a long progression. And because you may well have had all this math experience before, if you get to calculus early, you may well be able to do well in that exam too. So it depends a little bit on your perspective. Srijan, I know you were the one who sort of was bringing up the comparison to calculus. I don't know if I may not have captured what you were pointing out about that well.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So basically, what we're trying to really get at is that every AP exam is going to be hard for some people, and every AP exam is going to be easy for other people. And it really comes down to your preparation. For example, Andrew mentioned AP Calculus a lot. In most high schools, that is a class that you take in your junior or senior year, and it has a very high pass rate, meaning that a lot of people get credit for this AP class and are able to test out of their first math class. But in order to be able to do really well on that exam, they've gotten through probably the worst math classes possible. They've gotten through pre-calc, algebra 2, algebra 1, that awful geometry teacher. They've gotten through all of that to get to that AP calculus level. And computer science A, a lot of students don't have that opportunity, but our KTBYTE students do. They've taken 5 classes of computer science. So it's like they've taken all those awful classes that are super hard, and now they're at AP Computer Science A. So by taking these KTBYTE classes and having this years of prep, you really are at an advantage. So yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of the KTBYTE classes, though, it is important to keep in mind our classes generally meet once per week. So you would cover Core 5A and B in 18 hours of in-class time, plus maybe 18 to 36 hours of homework time. And hopefully people are using our student help hours we have available. But that isn't as much time as you would if you were doing this 5 days a week for an hour every day in high school. So it's important not to get overconfident about it. Even though we think most of our students understand the material fairly well, they're simply not as well practiced with it as a long exam like this would expect. So it's really important to self-study using a textbook, perhaps, or to take your AP class that is offered in your school, which you'll probably find easier than the KTBYTE work because they cover the same subjects, but it's all spread out a lot more and you have more time to get used to it. Or by taking our AP prep course that we offer every spring, where we do focus entirely on the exam, learning the exam format, practicing specifically for it. So in other words, most of our KTBYTE classes don't teach to the test, but that class does. We know it is difficult to prepare for it, and we want to sort of directly address how to do that the best. And then another thing is, if you have taken USA Computing Olympiad classes with us, or perhaps even participated in that independently, overall, the AP, I think almost everyone would agree, is easier than that. However, I do want to caution you, it is a different kind of difficulty. USA Computing Olympiad is what's called an algorithmic contest, where it's about sort of figuring out a puzzle about how to solve a problem in a certain way without sort of knowing what problem you're solving ahead of time. There's a little bit of that on the AP Computer Science exam, but it is much more about the technical details of the language, or at least the Computer Science A exam is. So just because you can do well at USICO, it doesn't mean that you'll instantly do well on the AP. It means you're likely to be able to do well, but you need to study for it through one of these recommended methods. Okay. Kelsey, maybe you can talk about the how to take it.
Yeah. So since my job is mostly helping parents and helping to figure out what's a good track or how we can get students to their goals, these are kind of my key things that I remind parents of a lot in different meetings, or if, their students getting to the age where we're thinking about high school and thinking about AP exams. The first thing I always say is to plan ahead. I know that I'm not sure the entire demographic of the students here today or what ages we all are, but I know that I wanted this to be marketed to all of our parents, down to even younger ages, because it's good to keep in mind what your long-term goals are. And so a lot of students and parents will end up taking the AP class through their school. A lot of schools these days do require that, but like I said, you can always call and ask, either going into your 9th grade or 10th grade, and just see what your school's regulations are on it. So you'll generally tend to get informed about it around the high school time. But like Andrew was talking about, and Srijan as well, the longer that you're in the material, the more comfortable you are with it. And so it could just relieve some stress in going into high school and already sort of feeling ahead in one way. And then, like we were talking about a little bit as well, some students who are homeschooled, or if your school doesn't offer an AP class or test, we will send these slides out later. But these 2 links are for the College Board timeline, which is for students and parents and even us to find out information about the AP. And it will help you kind of figure out if you are a homeschooled student or someone who has to figure it out for yourself. It'll tell you when to start looking at schools. And then there's also test dates. So depending on which AP test you would like to take, that will give you different test dates for each of the different tests. Some of our students might be prepared, like we said, before 9th grade, but I do still think it's wise to wait until you're in 9th grade, unless you have an incredibly hectic high school years upcoming. We generally do tend that you wait, and also because your high school might have very specific regulations and maybe won't even let you take it early. And then so for preparation, obviously most students will have a school sponsored preparation class, but like we said, we also have an AP prep class, and you can check out they do have free resources on the AP website. There are some, it's like an hour per week classes and study sessions. So even if you do go through a school sponsored class or work with us, those are still good resources to look into. And then taking the test, like we said, reiterating again, it's probably going to be through your school. But if you do need to find a testing center, there are other schools potentially in your area, or there could be testing centers in your area. So the AP does have a website portion dedicated to that, so that you can find a testing center that will allow you to take it. And our AP, if you have studied with us, I do believe we have a transcript if you studied through AP level material, and a lot of our pages do say what students have learned. So sometimes schools will not want to allow you to, but they may if you can prove that you will do well, or that you have covered the material that you need to. And so if you find yourself in that position down the road and you are one of our students, let us know if you can't find the resources that you need to show what your student has learned, but keep that in mind. And then for any international students potentially here, the link for finding testing centers and different regulations for different countries is in that link. So once you guys all get this seminar slides later, you can take a look at some of these links, the ones that maybe pertain to you. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's a bit about how to actually take the test, the logistics.
And it's a little bit a different topic, but to back up for a second, because I'm not sure we're going to talk about our AP prep class much more after this.
Yeah.
I did want to clarify, this is a review class. It is going to quickly go over the material you need and make sure that if there are any gaps to fill in, that you are prepared and sort of seeing what's important. But it is not going to work if you've never studied computer science before, or maybe just taken one course before and then take the prep class. It is important to either have taken this material somewhere else, or to have taken our core 5 level classes at least. So we'll talk a little bit about the two exams here. Um, I will start with the Computer Science A. This is the exam that's been around for a very long time. This isn't on our slides because it's really not super important anymore, but if anyone happens to have heard of Computer Science AB, that used to be a more advanced version of this, and frankly, not enough high school students were really prepared for it, so they discontinued that exam, and now we have another one. But Computer Science A is fairly traditional in studying actual programming. Believe it or not, programming tasks are not the only things that you might care about in the field of computer science, but that is what most, high school level work focuses on, and that's what the Computer Science A exam is about. It is similar to a sort of introductory programming course in university. It will often count towards your degree requirement if you do want to major in computer science, and often allow you to place out of a first-year programming course if you are pursuing that degree or taking it for other, engineering reasons or anything. It is very much focused on Java programming language, which is one of the reasons at KTBYTE we recommend just starting Java from the very beginning. A lot of other programs like to learn Python and then switch to Java, but we think that sort of just being really comfortable with that is helpful for exams like this. It does require you to read and understand code as well as to write it. So that's why it's very good if you've taken a lot of KTBYTE classes, because we do focus on the practical side of actually doing that with most of our lessons. And it's definitely the exam we would recommend if you're doing computer science in college, as well as, again, other technical areas where an engineering degree might require a computer science course. This can help with that too. Sir John, do you want to talk about the principles exam, I guess?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, so computer science principles is a newer exam. It's also still part of this whole advanced placement college board program. But it is a much easier exam, to be frank. It's on the easier side of a college level material that all these AP classes are. It's much more of an introductory course to maybe decide if you want to study computer science. It's a survey course, meaning it's a survey of a bunch of different areas of computer science. You'll be talking a lot about data. You're going to be talking a lot about different types of how to make or what it means to develop an algorithm, and talk about stuff like security. And the focus of this class is not really coding like the rest of KT classes. It's a much more overall overarching big idea, big theme type of exam. It's much less technical, and it usually does not lead to college credit in computer science, but it can lead to credit in other majors, often that are parallel to computer science, like information science, informatics, psychology, engineering. It can often lead to that introduction to computer science class that non-computer science majors take. Often, sometimes called a MATLAB course, or the non-coding course, that everyone hates but wants to take. So yeah, if you are going to study computer science, though, we do recommend a computer science A exam, and that is what most of our students will want to take.
Another thing sort of about that recommendation is even if you are not necessarily going to major in computer science, we do think that if you have been doing well in our courses through our advanced courses, you probably can do well on the computer science A exam. You will need to study for it. And again, perhaps that will be a bit more rigorous than the principles exam, but you've kind of already done the work to be able to do that. And you might as well take advantage of that by showing this fairly advanced technical knowledge that a lot of high school students don't have. It will help with admissions and possibly give you sort of credit in a different way than the principles exam would be. One other thing is it is possible to do both of them if your high school offers it, and you'll have to be the judge if you're concerned about the fee for that kind of thing. But I do think there is some value in the principles exam simply for the material covered. It is a broader course. You get a bit wider perspective of the field of computer science by looking at those topics compared to just focusing on the technical details of Java. So while that technical ability is really important, I think sometimes people underestimate the value of that, partly because it's a newer exam and a lot of universities haven't really decided how much value it is, and partly just that the intention of it is to be less technical. But it definitely doesn't mean it's not worth your time, but it does mean that you don't get as many direct advantages from it as the other exam does. So let's see. Yeah, you can consider what is your purpose in doing this? If you are looking for good grades in high school, for example, you may find the principles course is actually fairly accessible for you and maybe not as intense as the computer science A or a purely programming course. If you are looking for any kind of college credit, as Srijan said, you can definitely get some kind of credit with some universities with the principles exam, and it may be less of a time investment to do that. If you are looking for it for the computer science, if you're planning to pursue a computer science degree, you probably should be planning to aim for that. I will say also in terms of admissions, I would guess, I'm not really an expert on college admissions, but I would guess that a lot of college admissions programs would say that if you're looking for a computer science degree and you haven't taken the CS exam, they would definitely want to see some kind of technical attribution of your programming skills. It would help a lot. It's not that it's strictly required, but it's sort of pretty expected to try to do that. You do need to think about the time you have to prepare. So you can plan ahead a little bit about when you're going to take the exams. For instance, if you feel like you're not ready for the A exam right away, but you could take the principles exam in, ninth grade, that could be worth it. So there's various scheduling concerns.
And I can
But
also share on this
Mhm.
because this was one of the
Mhm.
slides that I wrote as well.
Mhm.
Main thought about these questions is to really get critical if you are going to have a pretty packed high school schedule. I know that every student is different. Different people have different after school programs, and a lot of our parents do plan quite far in advance, but thinking about what else you'll have going on around that time of year, keeping in mind those types of scheduling things, as well as how much time, if you need more time to prepare, and where you are with experience when going into those different things. So yeah, it was just some practical questions to think about if you're unsure of or on the fence about whether you want to take APCSA or principles or both, and what it can actually do to help you if you are going into computer science, or if it would take up an elective that maybe you'd prefer to have on something that you're really excited about as far as coursework. So those were some things to consider about.
All right. So to talk more about the specific format, just to kind of know if you are taking it soon or maybe even concerned about which type of exam you'd prefer to take, but this is perhaps a little bit more aimed for students who might be curious about just what to expect on it. APCSA is a bit more traditional exam and similar to a lot of other subjects, especially the technical ones that have standardized tests like this. There are two sections of the exam that you'll complete sort of with a short break in between them. There's a multiple choice section, and they're all, again, almost all based on reading code or even choosing the correct version of computer programming code to do something. And it's all based in Java. The free response sections here, unlike a lot of other tests, is purely about writing code. I mean, it's unlike any other test in that sense. But yeah, unlike a lot of other tests, there's no essay portion. You're not going to be sort of writing about how to do something in English. You're going to just be showing your ability to come up with code that solves problems in a certain way. And the different problems are designed to sort of address several different areas of programming skill. The entire exam is based on Java. There are definitely, one thing we tell to people who are wondering about different programming languages is if you have studied, say, Python for 3 years, and now you're thinking about learning Java, it's not going to be relearning the entire concepts of programming from scratch. Many of the concepts you know from Python will transfer over. But in terms of the exact, symbols and words and terms to write down, it is based on Java. So it's nice if you have studied that for a few years before the exam. And again, it is very technical. You need to be able to we say trace out code. You need to know step by step what exactly is the computer doing with different versions of parts of programs. Principles is less technical. There are some places where you might have to trace out the idea of what a program would do, but it is not focused on Java the way that the other exam is. And in fact, a lot of the programming tasks in the overall curriculum for that course could be done in several different languages, or sometimes they even use sort of simulated or made up language that isn't really used in the real world, just to illustrate the concepts of designing a program without worrying about the technical details of exactly how it would operate. And as we said, it's based on sort of broader concepts. You do go beyond just the actual programming. You look at the use of of programs in computer science in the world, different applications. Srijan mentioned sort of looking at computer security. You look at how computer networks work to some degree, maybe look at some mathematical ideas behind or that are relevant to computer science, just a bit broader, a little bit more variety of subjects. This exam also has an unusual format in that there is a project component that you do separately from the exam itself, but is counted towards the actual score you would get. And depending on whether you take the course or sort of try to engage with the exam independently, there's a lot of details that you would have to get into for how to do that that we're not going to cover here. And then again, there are multiple choice questions for that too. And there may be things about sort of understanding how code would work, but it's not going to be focused on Java. It's going to be more generalized than that. I do want to get into more with the APCSA exam, which again is the one focused on Java, just because it is the one most of our students will take. I'm in the middle of teaching, this semester of that prep course, and this is something that we definitely emphasize, but it's nice for everyone to know about it, even if you're not going to take our prep course. Like I said, it is similar to other exams. There are these two parts. I've kind of already addressed some of these things. One thing people are wondering about is, would you be penalized for incorrect answers? No, you can definitely make educated guesses on things you're not sure about. So even if you are doing a practice exam and you're thinking, wow, it's actually really hard to do these like 40 questions in 90 minutes, you can actually tend to be getting a pretty good score. Things are also graded on a curve, which I don't think I wrote down here. Yeah, I think when people take a practice test, they may feel intimidated by, only getting, let's say, 2/3 of the multiple choice questions right. That could actually be a decent score. Maybe you'd like to aim a little bit higher than that if you want to get the full score of a 5. Exams are graded on a scale of 1 to 5. You should probably aim a little higher than that, but it's not like you get a D on the exam because of that. That's actually probably not that bad, especially on a first attempt. The scoring is definitely something to get used to. Again, we won't get into all the details there, but keep in mind it's not exactly the same thing as like an in-school test. On the multiple choice section, you can work in problems in any order. So you can definitely, make some educated guesses at first and then come back to problems if you have time. I know I don't actually have all the details of how high schools are offering the exam in terms of digital versus on paper. For a very long time, it was on paper, but partly for COVID and also just in general, some or all schools are switching to more digital. So if you're wondering about that, you should check with the high school you're taking with to confirm that. I know they are in the process of doing that. As I mentioned, free response questions are based on actually writing code. The one thing I would say, just in addition to that idea, is it is also done either on paper or in a text digital environment that is not the same as a programming environment you would typically use, where there's sort of automated tools and features and error checking and auto completion of the code. Those things would not be available on the exam. So if you are thinking of preparing for it, do make sure you're starting to really take a close look at the technical details and the exact way the language is written, rather than relying too much on those other tools. One other thing, it's not a test necessarily about memorizing every detail. There is a quick reference sheet for specific terms to know, but the rules of the language and the ideas of the language are what you definitely do need to know really well. But it's not about sort of memorizing words or something for the exam. Here are two multiple choice questions. I'm not going to go through them in super large detail, but this is the first one is a little bit straightforward and sort of a classic trace out the code. We have a few pieces of information the program is going to be dealing with, and then it's going to be displaying some sort of calculation based on this information. There's a little bit of a trick in here where if you divide A divided by B, which is 5 divided by 2, that actually doesn't come out to the same thing it does in math. There's a programming rule about data types that deals with that. So even though it's a fairly short problem and most of our students should be able to do that, it's good to practice these kind of things to know which of those little tricks or aspects of the language that they're going to be focusing on and that you need to look out for. It is multiple choice, and you would pick your answer, which means you can do a little bit of guesswork, or maybe if you made the wrong guess and then you don't see the answer corresponding to what you thought, it can help you realize you made a mistake. I wanted to show this other one, which is actually choosing the right code to accomplish a certain task. Here they give a description of something they're trying to do in English, and then there are 3 different examples of code that may or may not successfully accomplish that task. So it's almost like writing the code yourself, and your ability to write code will help you answer these questions correctly, although you could consider it sort of a tracing problem as well, where you just see what each of the three options would do. With this kind of problem, which I think a lot of different AP subjects have, it could be any combination of these. So you have to really know for each of these, would it work or would it not work? And there, there's obviously a large variety, so we would definitely recommend looking at the practice materials available in a prep textbook or on the College Board website to kind of get a good sense of what all the questions are like. We wanted to talk a bit about, for that computer science A exam, again, the Java exam, what KTBYTE classes cover each of the materials. We have here, starting at core level 3, a lot of the more fundamental programming ideas are covered. We put next to each of these topics also the percentage that the sort of exam guideline says would be focused on the multiple choice section of the test. So you can sort of see that maybe almost 50% of the ideas on the test would be something that our core 3 students would already be aware of. Now, they probably wouldn't be as focused on the technical details as our older students are, but in terms of the ability to understand the ideas, or at least exposure to the ideas, they're already aware of a lot of it. Core 3B adds a little bit more, and just a few other little topics here and there as you go. And then just, maybe up to 20-ish% of the topics would be covered at that last core 5 level. However, do remember that it's not just about, do I know what this topic is or not? It's about how much practice do you have and how much depth of understanding do you have. So core 4 and 5 is where we really emphasize getting that deeper understanding, whereas a younger student sort of just starting programming would certainly not be ready to answer questions on these topics right away. And even for core 5 students, it is important to review, like, with that idea of depth, because you're not going to have the assistance you have when you're doing KTBYTE courses when you're actually doing the exam on your own. And Kelsey, I guess you can wrap it up with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there's a lot of great things that we've talked about that come from the AP exams. It could be college credit. It could be a good thing to add to your college portfolio. So I just wanted to spend a quick minute talking about some of the soft skills that it can help develop for students who are at the AP level and really working toward an AP exam, because you have to have really good time management, which is something that's going to go far beyond your high school and even college education. Having good study habits and really kind of having to figure out how you learn, because then you're learning how to learn and then using what you're learning. So you do sometimes have to get creative. A lot of students have to develop really those good study habits, but methods for studying as well. How to prioritize different things and take initiative, and sometimes taking failure. Sometimes maybe it doesn't go great the first time you take it, or even in practice tests, students might be confident and then not do nearly how they thought they would. So learning that and just learning how to pick yourself back up and keep going. And then approaching office hours or asking for help, because every student learns a little bit differently, we've learned. And so students who are able to ask for help and feel encouraged to ask for help generally get to learn a little bit better, because they're getting more perspective. And then obviously in the end, you definitely want to be able to do it on your own, but while you're learning, it's important to be able to ask for help. So that's all of our information for this seminar. We'll keep the Q&A open and then go ahead and release the exit poll. Before you leave, we do ask that you go ahead and answer the 4 questions that are on the exit poll. It helps us to make more of these seminars, to make better slides that we can share with everyone, and then hopefully make a seminar that's really useful. So right now, we will leave the floor open. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. You can put them in the Q&A. Go ahead and let us know if you have any other questions that we didn't cover. After you're done with the exit poll, you are more than welcome to leave the meeting if you don't have any questions, but we will hang out here for, I'll say about 5 minutes. And if people have questions, go ahead and put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. And if you do not, you are more than welcome to leave.
Thanks everyone for coming.
So we can wait for some questions. Srijan, do you want to go ahead and stop the YouTube live stream?
Yeah, sure.